ਸਿੱਖ ਚੈਨਲ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਸਰਦੂਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਾਲਵਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ। ਬੜੀ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨ ਕਿਸੇ ਪਦਵੀ ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਅੱਜ ਮੈਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਗਿੱਲ, ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਗਿੱਲ, ਜੋ ਕਿ ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਭਰਤੀ ਨੇ। ਉਹ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 14 ਸਾਲ ਤੋਂ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੇ। ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੇ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਵੀ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਕਿਹੋ ਜਿਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਜੀ ਆਇਆਂ ਕਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਕਰਾਂ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ।
ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ, ਬਹੁਤ-ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਸਮਾਂ ਕੱਢਣ ਦਾ। ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਇੱਥੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰੀਏ। What made you join the British Army?
Hi, Sadol. First of all, welcome to virtually, albeit, to 16 Air Assault Brigade headquarters here in Colchester. So what made me join the army? Very good question. I guess it goes back to a lot of influence. Certainly when I was younger, I was a very outdoorsy type of child, very interested by playing with weapons and things like that, as such children are, like when they're growing up. But it really started manifesting itself when I was at university. So when I really started thinking about, right, where does my future career lie? So I started getting interested in seeking information about the army. I gave it a go. Went for my initial selection, and then got pretty decent results on the back of it. And then I thought, oh, okay, this is okay. Maybe I might be quite good at this. But the only failure I had was my fitness wasn't good enough. So the careers officer at the time said, look, go back, work on your fitness, and then come back, which I did. And then again, I did a second test and got flying colours. Went for my selection for Sandhurst. There's 2 rounds of selection for which I passed at the top category. And then I thought, well, okay, this is looking good. Maybe this is where my future career lies. I mean, like I guess, the expectation of Indian parents. I finished my education at university and I'd started working for a well-known famous bank. I was there for maybe about 6 months when I thought, right, this really isn't going to be for me. I'm too restless. There's something else going on. You know, I had this sort of like interest in the army, and having first initially joined the bank, I thought, right, this isn't going to cut it for me. Or my mentality. I need a different type of challenge. I need somewhere where I can be outdoors. I can use my body a lot more. I can travel. So these were my motivations for joining the army or inquiring in the initial sense. And then once I realized that I was doing okay on the selection path, I went straight ahead, and gave it my full effort, and I passed everything and got through to Sandhurst.
Right. Okay. So the criteria is quite tough then, to joining, as you said, fitness and education and everything else. But how did your family felt about it? When you told your parents that you're going to join the army, not in the bank career or any other career?
Good question. So initially they really didn't support my effort. They were against. As a matter of fact, I would probably say my parents were both against me joining the army. They saw it as a very dangerous organization. They saw it as a very limited and contained organization, not an organization where Sikh people go into or people of color go into. So that never really deterred me. What I thought was about the career path. I was in a decent job, I admit, but my parents wanted me to stay in that job. They're just like, right, you've got your degree, you've got your career now sorted. Now the next step is for you to get married and build a little house for yourself, have children, and just go down that normal sort of like, I guess, trajectory that we all recognize. But that wasn't for me. So when I applied, my parents took me to Sandhurst for the very first day. Now, up until that point, they were anti me joining the army.
Yeah,
they were totally against it. But once they saw everybody in their uniforms and they saw the character of the colour sergeants and the officers, they saw how well presented they were. They saw how articulate they were, and basically just their persona. won over my parents. So from that day onwards, they were very much just like, wow, we see the honor now of having a military career. Before that, they were dead set against it. The other thing was that once we went to Sandhurst and we approached old colleges, Sandhurst has two colleges. One is called Old College, one is called New College. So Old College is a vast White House type looking building. In the middle, it has this grand staircase. So once you go through that staircase, you come across what's called an Indian Army Memorial Room. And you have these grand pictures. Yeah, you have these grand pictures of old Sikh officers from the days of World War II down one wing. On the other wing, you have portraits of the Gurkha officers and soldiers. And on seeing this, it really shaped my view of how the army interprets Indians specifically, and how, you know, how our history together has been so interlinked and integrated. So on seeing this, my parents thought, hey, look, this organization maybe isn't what we thought it would be. And from then on, they started supporting my career, and they were quite proud. And they are proud up until to this day that I joined the military within the UK.
I'm sure they're very proud parents now because you're on the rank of captain. And you now just explained to me, you know, the Sikh soldiers, the Gurkhas, and everybody else. If you were in the Indian army, maybe different, but how is a Sikh religion? Can you practice that fully? Is there any barriers or any type of obstacles to practice Sikhism in the army?
No, the army is, and the whole of the three services, the Royal Air Force and the Royal Navy, we are a very diverse organization, and we embrace diversity. There could be some issues presented in the sense that, like, I'm Dietary Singh. You'll see that I'm not wearing a kara.
Okay.
That's simply because, one, I forgot it at home. But normally what I have is I have two. I have one sarblo kara, which I normally wear when I'm away from my work, and then I have a small little steel baglet, which I normally wear at my desk. Now, you have to embrace practicality within the army. So doing nitnem part, for example, first thing in the morning, you know, all these daily things that we might want to do as a Amritari. The army is a 24 hours type of organization. Sometimes you may be working across the night. Sometimes you may be working up until the early morning. Sometimes you might have a normal 9 to 5 type of day. And you have to be realistic about the practicalities that are involved. One, in your life as a Sikhi, as a Sikh, so like Amritari Singh or Singhni, and the other thing about the needs of the army, because the needs of the organization come first, and your role in terms of your job has to come first. So what I do is I find it really easy to balance everything. You know, I do my part when I can, you know, and then I do my work when I have to. Sometimes you'll find me, you know, I'll be walking along in file or on a parade or on a running sort of like session or anything like that. And in my mind, I'll be doing a little bit of art or something like that, a little bit of meditation on the go. But you have to balance it. So in terms of policy, there's no issues. As a matter of fact, the army, you know, generally it seeks to recruit people of a diverse nature. So there's certainly no qualms in terms of policy. But in terms of practicality, there are things that you have to kind of like judge. And I think as Sikhs, we have the total agency to understand what we need to do, you know, in order to uphold our Sikhi values and uphold our work routine and our work responsibilities.
Right. Okay. So that's good to hear. So what about the dietary requirements? You know, obviously, if you're Amritari, you vegetarian, and you know, meat and everything else. You know, is there cooking facilities, or they cater for that kind of requirement from the Sikhs?
Yeah. So vegetarianism, even veganism, whatever type of diet you kind of like abide by is catered for. So whether you're Jewish, Sikh, Muslim, or Hindu, or whatever type of diet, you know, serves your purpose, the army does provide. The army does provide. But I think I have to call out something here as well, is that a number of Sikhs just aren't vegetarian. So we have to bear that in mind. Yeah, so you know, and for them, you know, there are non sort of like, you know, veg options as well. So in terms of what your belief system is, then yeah, the army fully supports that. And it actually doesn't just support it in the sense that it just gives you vegetarian food, but it actually creates policies and asks us as Sikhs and other ethnic minorities to update these policies constantly. So they
Right.
ask for our guidance, which is great to see, actually, which is, again, gives me that kind of like, gives me that faith in the system that they do honor and they do actually respect your belief system.
Right. That's good to hear, because I think they have to cater for all diversity, because if they don't, then the attraction wouldn't be there. So how many Sikhs you think there are in the army now?
So right now, at the top of my head, I would probably say there's about 250 to 350, I think,
Mm,
Sikhs across defence. By defence, I mean all three services: the Army, the Royal Air Force, as well as the Royal Navy. So numbers have been growing. What I've seen is numbers have been growing over the past decade. I remember a stage when we were only at about 150, but now we've
right.
seen a good level of recruitment going on, and now we're up to about 250, 350 mark, which is good to see. But personally, I would like to see that going up a little bit higher.
Right. Right. In way of career, with people when they leave the army or retire, or for some reason they leave, they must have a career, or they want to have a career where they can fall back onto. What is the type of a career available, or the stream or the progression into the career in the army?
Actually, so two things, right? You can either join the army as a private soldier, where
Hmm.
you come in at the age of 18 or 19. You don't have let's say, a strong academic background. The army would put you through a number of tests, and them being physical as well as mental, as well as aptitude.
Mm,
If you pass those, then you go through to what we call phase one training. Phase one training is about 11 weeks for the average soldier. This is where they learn about basic infantry skills or basic army skills: how to fire your weapon, how to live in the field, how to wear your uniform correctly,
mm,
how to pack kit. If you have to wear a big backpack. After those 11 weeks, the soldier is asked to specialize. You can either go into an infantry unit, you can go into intelligence, you can go be an engineer, a mechanic, you could go as a driver or a chef. There's so many different trades in the army.
mm,
Um, and I do urge all of your viewers, anybody who's interested, to actually look on the army websites to have a look to see if there's a trade there that suits them, and I'm sure they will find something of interest.
mm,
Now, the
mm,
army is such an organization where it is constantly putting people through training packages and training courses. You will never have a single soldier that spends more than a year without having done some type of training course. We
mm,
need these simply because we have a rank structure. Now, from a private soldier, a soldier will go to lance corporal, corporal, sergeant, staff sergeant, or colour sergeant, and then warrant officer. Now, in order to progress through those, your whole career is pretty much mapped out within the military. You have to do a number of courses, and these courses set you up pretty much for life. You get confidence, presentation skills, your trade skills. If you're a mechanic, you will learn how to fix a vehicle. If you're an engineer, you need to learn how to use specialist equipment in order to map terrain.
mhm,
If you're in intelligence, you need to understand how to do analysis of intelligence that you're given. If you're in the infantry, you don't just learn how to use a rifle, but you learn how to use several different bits of weaponry that allow you to be effective and a team player on the battlefield, because the battle is not going to run itself. So you are equipped with a high sort of like degree of skills that serve you well in the military, but then also serve you well out on civilian street if you were to
mm,
leave.
mm, mm,
So that's one route. The second route is the route that I took, which is the officer route. Now, I joined the army after I'd done my degree. I did a degree in mathematics in London, and went straight into Sandhurst after passing all of my selection tests, even though there was a small bit where I worked in the. Um, but then, after my initial training, so at Sandhurst, you spent a year. That is all about you being a leader in the army.
mm,
So officers are paid to think. This is what you're constantly told at Sandhurst. You're not paid to do, you're paid to think. You are the people. So as an officer, I am part of the team that creates the plan when we go to battle,
mm,
or if we had to, conduct an operation or a campaign somewhere. So I'm on the planning team, and we write the plans, and then we give it to our subordinate units to implement.
mm.
So after my year at Sandhurst, once I commissioned as a junior officer, then I went on to do my specialist training. Now, initially, I specialised in what we call the Logistics Corps, Royal Logistic Corps. But now my job and my career profile has morphed into communications and campaign communication, which involves a vast array of things from social media through to huge campaign type communications, where we would have to either work with press or international organizations to give out messages or influence an audience.
Yeah, that's very good.
So,
I mean, I think
yeah.
career-wise, people who are listening, if they ever wanted to go into the army, have a career, and when they leave the army, that career is with them, and they can practice that as a civilian, as you said. Next thing I would like to ask you is, because we always have prejudices, racism in every organization. And recently, you've probably seen TV, Black Lives Matter. And have you experienced anything like that in the army, racism, prejudice, or a barrier for your progression or for promotions, anything like that? And did the Black Lives outside, I mean, it's all over the world, did that have any effect on it? And what are your views on that?
In terms of have I experienced any sorts of racism, I'd say directly, no, I never have. But however, you do sometimes notice that people's sense of humor sometimes goes in the wrong direction. I have witnessed a couple of my colleagues. So throughout my 14 years, I've witnessed this twice, where they've used humor in a slightly inappropriate way. Now, being an officer and having the values that we have within the army, I spoke to that person individually and explained to them why I found their sense of humor slightly offensive. They totally understood. I could have took it in a completely different way in terms of discipline or punishment. But, my style, and you'll find that the style of the British Army really is to coach people when it comes to leadership. We don't like to throw the book at anybody. So this individual totally understood where I was coming from and apologized. But in terms of like barriers to progression, absolutely not. So the army is a meritocracy. You work hard, we play hard, but you have to be competent at your job. So it takes a lot out of you, and that's, we don't disguise the fact. It takes a lot out of you physically as well as mentally, because you have to think through a lot of concepts. We have to plan a lot of scenarios, and we have to make sure that we deliver what we're expected to deliver. So racism, like, I can't say that it's completely non-existent in the army, because as an organization, and you'll find some sorts of racism happens in all organizations. Now, I've worked in several different organizations, once I've been within the army, and I've seen how they operate. Now, what we have in the army, and in terms of like Black Lives Matter, even before the BLM movement started, what we already had within the army was what we call a SO1 BAME. So we had a diversity team, and that's looked after by a colonel, and they look after all the different networks and interest groups that we have across the army. So what we have in the army, we actually have a defence Sikh network where all the Sikhs across all the services can come into, and they can share their feelings, or they can tell us what's going on, and they can take guidance. And it helps us write policy for Sikhs. For example, simple policy, like, when are you going to wear your dastar? Where are you going to wear your Capt badge? What color is it going to be? Are you going to wear your kirpan on this situation, or your kara on this situation? So we do write that type of policy. And just like we have that type of network, the Rastafarians, the Jews, the Hindus, the LGBT network, they all have their own networks that they can fall back on and take guidance from.
Right.
So BLM is an exceptionally important movement, and that we do recognize. And within the army, I mean, I'll probably say that we were doing a pretty good job in terms of, having our diversity policy in place well before that started. And I'm really grateful that we do, because it allows people like myself, who are ethnically minority, to fit in well and be part of the team without any questions being asked. So that is great. But, we are constantly improving. So I wouldn't say we're the perfect organization, but we are a learning organization where we learn about what's happened, and we are quick to learn. And that's what makes me feel that actually the British Army is like one of the best organizations that you will ever see, I think, in the world. because the way it treats its employees and the way it sees and hears the people of the world outside of the army.
So, I mean, you can categorically state rather, is anybody from the ethnic minorities, or especially the Sikh, you would encourage them to join. That barrier isn't there. I mean, you will always find the prejudices in the families, all across the world. But as an organization, you would encourage people to join.
I'm a huge advocate. I completely advocate military service. There's no better place that I would rather be. And anybody that I meet, like at the Gurdwara, my friends are all like Sikhs, like Amritari Singhs. I'm well immersed in the Sikh community back at home and within the UK. And there's no time that I would ever say, hey, don't go into the military service. You will learn so many different skills and you will see so many different things that will challenge you and make you a better individual as a result of it.
There's one question I asked a very high ranking officer from Indian Army. I'm going to ask you the same, which is that you're a Sikh, you practice your Sikh, and if anything came in the army, because your allegiance is to the Queen or to the sovereignty of British Army, then if anything conflicted between the Sikhs and that army, what would you do? What would come first?
What you mean between the UK and India, for example?
No. I mean, as a Sikh, and there's this thing, we call. I mean, I'm a Sikh. I cannot do this, and the Constitution said, doesn't matter. You're in the army. This is what you got to do. So, what would you choose?
So, what we have is we have values within the army, right? These values are such as like courage, discipline, selfless commitment, total professionalism, loyalty. This comes down to addressing your values. So I've been to Iraq, right? I've been to the Falkland Islands, not during the war, but subsequently in the peace operation. I was in Northern Ireland when the operations there were going on. So I've been to 3 major theatres that we've been involved with. Now, nothing has ever come across my desk or through my perception or my belief system where I've thought, right, I can't get involved in that. Everything has been above board in the sense that I know what my responsibilities are and I know what the end state of this mission is that I've been asked to complete.
Okay, fine.
Now,
Go on. Finally, I was going to ask you what you actually said. It was if he ever conflict with India and British, I'm sure it's not going to have happen. Which side would you take?
It's not about sides. It's definitely not about sides. So, if anything, between the UK and India, our forces actually have trained together. And the last time we actually trained together was just earlier this year in February, where we had the 14th Battalion of the Dogra Regiment. They came over from India and we did a training exercise with the British Army on Salisbury Plain. So if anything, we do train together. But, in terms of going to war generally, then again, this comes down to your values. So I get asked this question as well a few times, like, what would you do if this happened? Or, would you, start firing your weapon in that situation? And that's, for me, it comes down to our professionalism. Now, the British Army is a force for good. And I say that because we abide by an international rules-based system. There are things such as the Geneva Convention. There are things such as the NATO Treaty, UN Security Council resolutions that we abide by. So during a conflict, we don't just go in. The army doesn't have the authority to just get up and go. We are an extension of politics. And because that extension of politics, we have certain rules that we have to follow. So when we go somewhere, we take our values with us. Now, if I didn't go to the battlefield or, to a certain area of conflict, there's somebody else would go in my place. But I know how I interpret these values and I take them very seriously, not just because they are values of the British Army, but because they massively overlap our values as Sikh people. So that selfless commitment, that loyalty, that total professionalism, it massively overlaps with who we are as Sikhs. And so I almost interpret it as a double duty to actually, take on that responsibility and deploy to that area of conflict so that I can put my stance on it and I can put my values, implement my values upon 1, my colleagues, and 2, our adversaries in that area.
Very good. Okay. Very quickly, there's sometimes things that are happening in India, or especially in the Punjab, where most of the Sikhs always belong to, especially the farmers' issue there. Is anything like that ever affect you personally to say, यार इंडिया च की हो रहा मैं इत्थे ब्रिटिश आर्मी दे विच ऐदां अपना मतलब loyalty everything Sikhism करदा हैगा ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਹ ਅਨਿਆਂ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ is not justice for them. Do you ever feel anything towards that?
Uh, yeah, massively. I mean, I was born in Ludhiana,
Okay,
so I consider myself to be first generation immigrant.
right.
So we came over at a young age. I was about 4 or 5 years old when I first came over. I'm a late starter at school. I only learned to speak English by the age of about 8 or something like that. But these issues that go on in Punjab massively affect all of us. I mean, the recent conflicts in terms of like what's going on with the farmers or anything else like that, that has a huge impact on our sort of like, well-being, because it's at the back of our minds. We think
Mm,
like what's going on at home. Now, like my family, like many of your viewers' families, we've got Jameen back, in
yep.
Punjab. We have
Yeah,
our
yeah.
houses in the Bend, and we have a strong connection to the Bend.
Mm,
So these are issues that massively do impact our happiness, and I wouldn't say is the issues going on there aren't an issue for the British Army per se, but the thing is, what we can recognise and what we do have is the Defence Sikh network. We have a strong relationship with our politicians. So the likes of Dan Desi MP. I know we had a call with him just a couple of weeks ago, and I've been on calls where him, Preet Gill, and other members of Parliament have tried to find a solution towards the farmers' strike.
mm,
And I actually, because I have an interest, I do take part in these things, and I'm allowed to, because these are
yep.
things that are separate from my work. But
Mm,
these are also issues that are important for me. Like my Masi lives in the Bend near Garanya, so I'm totally sort of like conscious of what she's going through. I'm conscious
yeah.
of what's happening with our own Jameen and how is that going to be resolved. And I'm also kind of like, I'm also conscious of what's going to happen to the future. Where is Punjab going to be in a year's or 2 years' time? And what can I do to help the progress of one, the farmers, or possibly even, maybe suggest something through the right channels, through the MPs who can write a letter, a suggestion of how possibly, things should move forward. But
Mm,
it's not something that I get involved with from a army point of view, but it's
yeah.
something that's involved
Well,
in my personal life.
Jyoth, Captain Jyoth, very well things you've said today, and I really enjoyed talking to you. And I wish you all the best for your future and in the army. And I'm sure other people, after seeing this show, probably ring the Sikh channel to say where they can get the information. I'm sure the army joining the army information is available. And it's been lovely talking to you. And we wish you, your career, everything what you do in the army from the Sikh channel. Thanks for coming and talking to us today. Thank you very much.
Thank
ਸੋ
you.
ਜੀ
Thanks
ਇਹ
for having
ਸਨ ਜੀ ਕੈਪਟਨ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ। ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗਾ ਲੱਗਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਕੇ, ਜੋ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰੈਸ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਸਾਡੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਸ਼ੁਭ ਦੁਆਵਾਂ ਨੇ, ਅਰਦਾਸ ਨੇ, ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਪਹਿਰਾਵੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ, ਬ੍ਰਿਟਿਸ਼ ਆਰਮੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ, ਤੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਹੀ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਹੈ। ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਇੱਥੇ ਸਮਾਪਤ ਹੈ। ਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸਮ ਦੀ ਮੈਂ ਗਲਤੀ ਕਰ ਗਿਆ ਹਾਂ ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨਾ। ਹਰਜੋਤ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਤੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਵਿਦਾਇਗੀ ਦੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਹੈ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ
so
ਫਤਿਹ।